everybody, let's tell stories.
It's time for Comics Kids.
Hey Comics Kids, it's Mr. Craig here from the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Green Bay, as well as the virtual Boys and Girls Club and Boys and Girls Club Creates. It's a lot of cool stuff, and you know what? I'm a big old liar. I'm a liar. I told you guys that I was going to be working on coloring with my next video that I was going to do, but there was so many different things I wanted to touch base with you on before we move on. And we've got a lot of different things that we can do to create an even more dynamic comic page. And I wanted to make sure that I was covering some of these things so that you guys can make the coolest, most awesome page that you could possibly make. And we can't do that without kind of knowing some of the other tips. Always be looking at different comics and different things and see different styles that you like, because you can emulate those in your own drawings and make it look super awesome. We shouldn't really be drawing, let's say, Yu-Gi-Oh! We don't want to take somebody else's character and turn it into something that we're going to say is ours, because that's copyright infringement. But we can make our own type of character that's sort of like that. Superman, when he came out, there was another character that came out about the same time called Captain Marvel, who later on became Shazam, because Captain Marvel kind of got, that name got taken away from them by Marvel Comics. And that was a whole big mess for a while, but they eventually figured it out. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about is resource images. When you are working on your comic, don't be afraid to get your hands on some pictures or make some pictures. This is my house, and I needed to make a picture of my house for one of my panels. And you know what? I could draw it outside and figure it out, and that would work great, but I can also get a picture of it so I can know what the drawings looks like, and I can try to make the lines for that. This was the inside of a Walmart, and I took a picture when the shelves were empty during pandemic, and that was one of the pictures that I wanted to use in my comic. So you can easily make resource images to help you with your comic. And you know what? If you're in a place that is, this is your setting, draw that. Draw from life anytime you can possibly get a chance to do that. The next thing you can do is get your mitts on one of these little figures. Okay? It's like, I wanted to draw a little superhero that's doing different things. Well, oops, his hand fell off. Here's my first little guy that I got, and the reason that his hand came off is because they're very fragile. And one of my students just kind of went, eh, and it's like, oh, Mr. Craig, his hand broke off. Well, yeah, that's because he's dainty. Don't let his muscular body fool you. He's kind of a pretty weak little thing. But it helps a lot when you want to try to create a dynamic pose for your figure, and what is going to happen. What is he going to look like? What's he going to be doing? And then there's a lot of little props that come with these figures too that can help you quite a bit. And you know what? You don't have to go and get any fancy little model like this. Why not draw from one of your own little action figures? Sometimes you can get some of those figures. I remember seeing Masters of the Universe figures in a quarter box at a rummage sale, but I could have picked up the whole set for under 10 bucks. But I never did that. So getting yourself some resource models can help you quite a bit as well. Let's see here. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about are some of the drawing tools that you can use. Now let's say that you have, and I don't really have a lot of action lines on my page here. Baghead's it's kind of just him sitting at the beach or at the fishing pond. So there's nothing really super dynamic about what's happening here. But if I did have some of that, you know what? Let's do this real quick. I'm gonna make a real quick figure here. Take a look. And all right, here is a fist in the air. Fist, fist, fist. And here's an arm. Woo! And here is, and his face is mad. Now, this is a terrible drawing, but it's a perfect example for what I want to try to talk to you about. And keep in mind, you guys, I'm going super fast here because I just want to make motion lines. Comic books are filled with motion lines. We want to see that, woof, something's happening. Woof, something's going on. Wham, something's moving. Excitement is taking place. And one of the things you can do is I'd probably draw them with a pencil first so I know the arcs that I want it to do. And then I can kind of go in here and ink those marks. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And you know what? The line that I got here wasn't perfect because I went so fast. Sometimes, listen up, yes, sometimes those lines that are weaker lines can be done on purpose. In fact, a lot of times when artists in the past were making lines for their comics and things like that, they would use a dry brush technique where the brush was very dry and they'd wisp it through, and it didn't make sharp, perfect lines. It made this wispy, fast-looking line. And that's pretty cool because it gives that illusion of motion. Now, another thing that they would do is they'd use a little X-Acto knife to scratch the surface of the paper sometimes so that it would break that line up. And if it was raining, for example, they'd make a great big area of black and then take that scraper and go whack, 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 whack through it, and it would make these lines that are coming down that look just like rain. So there's a little trick that they could do with that. Now, there also were tools that could help you get these curves. One of those tools is called a French curve, and they come in a set of probably about 6 or 7 of them, and they all have perfectly shaped curves that have been around for a century. And they are, no matter how you turn them and put them down, they can make the curves that you need. Another one, I can't find my French curves. That's why I'm showing you this one. This is a flexible curve, and this one here is kind of, you can bend it any way you want to try to get a smooth curve. So now if I wanted to make another line here for his punch, I'd try to make it smooth first and foremost and smooth out my arc so it looks nice and clean. And then I could take my marker and kind of go whoop, and it's got this perfect line that kind of comes through there. So these are tools for making our line work. Flexible curve. And you know what? You know how many times I've had to use this? Probably about 10 times. I really haven't had to ever use this very much, but it's a helpful tool when you want to be precise. Precise. Now, let's see here. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the lettering concept of making your page. Now, the way that they would do that in the past is once the page was finished, let's see if this is a T-square, by the way, a T-square and triangles. All right, this is a triangle, as well as this one here. This is another triangle. This one here is probably the one I'm going to use. This one here is adjustable, so if I open it up, I can go from 90 degrees to 80 to 70 to 60 to 50 to 40, or to 45. That's a 45-degree angle. A lot of times you're going to get your angles in 60-30 and 45 degrees. That's sort of how they come in those two different sizes. This one here is a fancy one because it can make any angle practically. And those are tools. I'm going to keep this one up here because I might want to use that one. But now, with a T-square, I can line it up on the side of my table so it's nice and straight. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my paper with it so it's nice and straight, and I'm going to put a little bit of tape at the top so that it'll line this up and it'll keep it straight on the table. I don't want it moving. I don't want it moving on me. And first thing you want to do, and I know you guys don't like to hear this, but the first thing you want to do when you're making your lettering is make guidelines. Yes, you need to make some guidelines. So now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go up to, let's see here, this panel right here, because that's the only one that I know for sure what I want him to say. And you know what? Sometimes when you're creating stuff, gang, you can make, there's something so rewarding about seeing your work when it's finished. It's so much work sometimes to do it and make it work. And then when it's finally done, you can kind of go, wow, that looks fantastic. Now, on the side of this triangle, there is a ruler. So I'm going to actually go in here before we even start up. My panel is about 3/4 inch wide. So I've got about 1/8 of an inch for each of my lines. And then when I go in here, and the reason I'm showing you guys this is because You should be able to incorporate hand lettering into your panels if you really want to. With what we're doing with the kids, oftentimes it's so much easier to just put it into the computer, and I have a really cool comics font called Wild and Crazy. But to really give your comics that highest degree of dynamics and make it as cool as possible, having that hand lettering is even better. And I don't often do that. Mr. Craig, yes, you need to do more of this. I'm sorry, but I can't really hand letter super great, so I don't do that all the time. But now I'm going to figure out, because on this first one panel here, he says, have no fear, Tommy is here. So I got to start planning how that's going to fit the bubble. So you want to have that thought out before you actually start lettering, because then you're gonna, if you don't plan it out and make a little bit of guidelines and stuff, you're gonna get to the end of the line. It's like, oh no, I needed space for 3 more letters. Ah, why? And that would be bad. So have no fear, Tommy is here. Too much coffee, Mr. Craig. So now here's one of the things I like to do. Is I like to figure out, so I've got 3 lines, 1, 2, 3, and I want to put these into that space. Well, I'm going to have is here at the bottom. Is here with an exclamation point. And now I count out how many spaces that is. 1, 2, 3, I'm giving this middle space, the empty space, I'm counting that so that it's actually the thickness of a letter between my words. Keep that in mind. 4, 5, 6, 7, and then my apostrophe 8. So I know, here's the trick. If I divide that into 2, I get to about 4. So the first 4 letters are IS space H. That's the first part of the word. And the last one is ERE apostrophe. So that's kind of how it goes. And now I know where the middle is. I know where the middle is so that I can kind of go in here and go, all right, if this is the middle of the panel, I need to make HERE there, apostrophe, and SI right there. So it fits. It fits perfectly. Yes, yes, yes. And now the next line is, I'm probably going to have to do the same thing with the top. Although no. I'm going to have the whole first part of the word say, darn it, I'm going to change it. Mr. Craig, why? Because it's going to look better in the long run. Have no is the first line. Have no. And then the next line is fear, comma, Tommy is. So now I'm going to take the is from the bottom and put it up at the top, just because I'm going to have more room for the here at the bottom. Oh, you goofball. Nope, just a matter of erasing it. And again, now I've got a perfect center for that, because I have HERE apostrophe 5. That means that the third letter is my middle part, and it's going to be right on the middle of the panel. So HE, half of R, goes on the side. So I'm going to put the R right in the center. E apostrophe H. And so now I've got the word here put in there, and it works great. At the top, have no. HAVE space NO. So now I've got 7, so that means that my fourth letter is the center one. HAVE. E is the center. So I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to put my E in the center. NOVAH. Have no on the top. And now the next line, fear, comma, Tommy is here. FEAR, comma, space, TOMMY, space, IS. 14 letters, 14 spaces. That means that my 7th letter is going to be on the splitting. My 7th and 8th letter are going to be splitting that space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that means that the T and the O, T and O are going to be in the center. So TOMMY. Now here's something else that I'm going to do. Is because the letters M are chubby letters. They're big. They're bigger a little bit by the other ones. I'm going to shove it just a tiny bit that way. Okay? Not by too much, but just a little bit so that I have a little bit more breathing space with my fear. I gotta make sure I'm spelling it right. And you know what? What happens if you spell it wrong? What happens if you mess up your spelling? Well, you white it out and you try to do it over. So now I've got my guidelines and my lettering done. There's a couple different ways of doing this, and this is a calligraphy pen, and if you look at it, it's got a flat chiseled top. So if I'm really going to be working on calligraphy, I can kind of write my bag head with 5 thick and thin lines. I spent way too much time in high school learning how to do this calligraphy with dip pens and things like that, thanks to my art teacher, Mr. Hansen. But this is too big. This is too big to do that with. So I'm going to look at, let's see here. This is pretty chubby too, so I don't want to use that. You want to keep your lettering as legible as possible. This M might be perfect. So now I go up in here and I'm going to make my lettering H, A, V, E, and you want to, there's all kinds of tricks that you can learn on how to letter appropriately. I've had lettering classes in college, that were so much work. Have no, that's sloppy. And then when you're making your words, like the word Tommy, that's an important word in that phrase. I might want to emphasize that, make it a little thicker. And this fear got really jammed up against the side of the bubble. I don't know if I like that so much. That's definitely not a perfect use of the space. But you know what? I'm going to keep it because I want you guys to know how some of this is done. And some of my lettering I'm going to use the computer for just because it's so much easier. Tommy is, and I'm going to move my is over just a hair just to give myself more space. And then at the bottom here, I had a lot of room for here, so I made it pretty thick here. And what do we do when our lettering is all done and the ink is dry? Well, we clean up and we erase that space with a soft vinyl eraser. So let's go in here and please be dry. I can go in here and clean this up. And now we see my first hand-lettered bubble. Have no fear, Tommy is here. It's okay. It's not my best work in lettering by far, but I wanted to do it a little bit faster just so that you guys could see it. Probably would want to take more time when I'm doing this for a professional page. I'd want to make it take a little bit more time to get it just precise. There's ways of making your S's, for example, where you're almost like you're hanging them on that top line, or your O's, you're hanging that on the top line so all these spaces are there. And there's a lot to learn about doing fonts and your own lettering and things like that. On the computer, boom, it's there. You can either have it as all caps heavy or all caps light. That's just the nature of comics writing. But I wanted to show you, that was talking a little bit about lettering. You can also use that same thing for sound effects. So if you're trying to make a sound effect, something big, like here's some chomp, 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 that's just some words happening. And I think, you know what, I think that works better as a sound effect there, and the grumble, grumble works better than the lettering that I have in the bubble. I think it works a lot better. But here is a professional comics page that I wanted to share with you. Now this is from an artist by the name of Gene Colan, and he is another one of those greats that I've talked about from way back in the past. He is another person that's very, very reputed in the arts world, comics art world. with his Tomb of Dracula and Daredevil and things like that. That's right, Mr. Alex, Daredevil. Gene Colan did a lot of that. But I wanted you to kind of see this because this is all hand lettering that is sent to another guy. Once they have the initial inks and drawings done, they ship this page off or put it to the next office down the hallway, and there's a guy there that's going to be lettering all of the pages. Now, that works out really good, but here's another example of how it's done when you don't necessarily know who's going to be doing your lettering. Check this out. This is a word bubble. This is a word bubble here that has come unglued because this is a very old page. This is from a black and white vampire comic or a scary comic from back in the day. And this is also by Gene Colan. And you can see that the artist who did, and I'm gonna have to paste these back on somehow, but this one here came off of the page right here. Right there is where it was. So he drew all this, and this is a sound effect that somebody cut in there and pasted in there. Here's another word bubble that was pasted in there. Here's some things that are pasted in. All of this stuff. This must, I bet you $1 that this is probably the tail for that right there. Yep, it looks like it. And I'm gonna have to do something or I'm gonna lose these pieces. Look at that. That one came up. This is probably glued down with rubber cement back in the day. It looks like it. And now you can see that the artist drew all this stuff. They drew all this. And then we had all these words that had to come in there. So they covered up a big chunk of what was happening to kind of get rid of, to tell the story, ultimately. But it's so frustrating for me sometimes to know that there was all this great artwork that was underneath there. Now, where does this one go? I'm not sure exactly where this one goes. It might fit up here or something. I'm not sure. But I don't want to lose these because these original art pages are very collectible and they're something worth having because they're one-of-a-kind pieces. And if I lose these, then I kind of have lost a part of what made this story so special. But look at that. That is kind of, that shows you, whoops, that shows you exactly how much lettering went into that, and this person who did that is really skilled. So there's a lot of stuff you can learn by looking at the artwork of the artists from the past. How did they work with their dynamics? How did they work with the line work? How did they work with sound effects and things like that? Apply those tricks to your comic pages and they're going to be even more awesome and punchy. So, my name is Mr. Craig, and I represent the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Green Bay, as well as the virtual Boys and Girls Club and Boys and Girls Club Creates. And now, I'm gonna have a whole nother session on other things you can do to enhance your page. So, just sit back and wait for that to come. We'll see you guys very soon. Keep creating and tell us some stories.